A lot to get to here on a Thursday afternoon edition of Three and Out, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network, streaming live on the web, ESPNCoastal.com. BJ Bennett here alongside Ben Troop, Cody Queen as well. And again, a busy show here in just a little bit. We'll talk with Gaurav Vidak of Talking Chop. The Braves get a walk-off last night. You needed one, and Ronald Acuna comes through. You're 20-23 overall, now getting ready for the Pirates. So we'll talk some Braves baseball here in hour one. We'll also hear from DJ Shockley, Georgia legend, ESPN and SEC Network, as we're 100 days out from college football, which is exciting. We'll look at a preseason top 25 poll. Where's Georgia? We'll also chat with Michael Bratton. You might know him as SEC Mike at That SEC Podcast, contributes to Saturday Down South. He has some power rankings out. An interesting team at number one. David Waters, Gators Breakdown, will join us later in the show as well, as there's a lot to talk about on the college football front, but also been with the Gators. This was speculated for a while. We've already talked about it, but breaking news recently, Tim Tebow has signed with the Jacksonville Jaguars. It has happened. He is at practice today. Tim Tebow, you can actually go to Jaguars.com, get his jersey. It is for sale right there alongside Trevor Lawrence, Travis Etienne, being heavily promoted, obviously. I don't know what this means in terms of the future, but for right now, Tim Tebow is with the Jacksonville Jaguars, has signed his contract. You're obviously a former Gator All-American tight end, NFL tight end. Your thoughts on this and kind of what the challenges are awaiting Tim Tebow?
Well, Urban Meyer did all he can, BJ, to kind of keep this under wraps as much as he could. But, I mean, Tim Tebow signed, sealed, delivered. He's a Jacksonville Jaguar, as you already said, BJ. You go to Jaguars.com, you see that big old number 85 with Tebow on the back. I saw him walking out with old Shaq Hennessy. And if I'm not mistaken, this is the first time I've ever seen any Jaguar walk out to a practice ever. And you know, at all my times of watching the Jaguars, but he's polarizing, BJ. And if you're Urban Meyer, I mean, you need some good publicity. You don't want the buzz to kind of like die down, because we knew that Trevor Lawrence was going to be number one overall pick. It was great that they picked up Travis Etienne in the first round. They added some really, really nice pieces to go with the rest of that draft class, but none of those guys, all those guys, fall short when you talk about what Tim Tebow brings to an organization. Now, right now, it's all fun and games. Ain't nobody got no pads on. Live bullets ain't going yet. I mean, a bunch of those guys definitely grew up a Tim Tebow fan. They all probably, BJ, I wouldn't be surprised they was in there taking selfies with him. I mean, because he's a celebrity. I mean, he is, but he's the 90th man on the roster. He's fighting for a roster spot. Tim Tebow is in a position in football that he's never been in before. He's an underdog. He's a guy but he got a big name, but his big name ain't going to be big enough. He knows the guy making the decisions and the head coach in Urban Meyer. But, BJ, just like I know, just because he's Tim Tebow doesn't warrant him anything but an invite to camp with a bunch of young, hungry players that are trying to make a name for themselves. I think he's going to go out there and compete. I do my best to try to, understand that I'm talking about Tim Tebow, the football player, not Tim Tebow, the person, because he's one of those people, BJ, you can't really separate the two. I mean, there aren't too many people as polarizing as a Tim Tebow in the last, 15 years in the game, in the sport. But I do think that if you Jacksonville, you treat him like another player. He's a player that, he's a fringe player trying to make the team. I think he's one of, right now, 6 tight ends I think they got on the roster right now. So he's definitely, not in a position to feel comfortable right now that he has a position locked in. But I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued to see. I mean, if you're on social media, it's not the best place to get your news when you're trying to look for something encouraging, especially if you're a Tim Tebow fan. But for one day, BJ, number one, I'm going to be checking for them tickets. I mean, for them jersey sales. I'm pretty sure they are flying off the shelf for Tim Tebow right now. I mean, Tim Tebow wearing number 85. I mean, if somebody said he might not be that number later on, well, what y'all going to start selling other jerseys with his number on it? So this will be one of those times, BJ, it's like hopefully, it's like when Luka Doncic got drafted by the Hawks. I mean, it was short-lived. We will see what happened with Tim Tebow, but right now, if you're a Jaguars fan, you're loving it. If you're a Jaguars player, you're embracing it. And if you're Tim Tebow, you're trying to make the most of it. And hopefully all 3 of those things are happening right now. We'll see fairy tale right now, BJ, because ain't nothing really happening. But once the decision starts being made and we get into that first preseason game and it's coming down to that last cut, we'll see if Tim Tebow is still a part of this team, because I think Urban Meyer What people don't realize, he's still adjusting to being in the NFL. This is the college to where what he says goes. This is the college to where he is the king of that entire domain, not just Florida, but Gainesville, Florida, and the surrounding areas. When he walks in the room, everybody's quiet. He's gonna have to earn his stripes too. So we'll see what happens. I'm happy with him, Tebow. To people that don't like it, you might as well find you something else to do, because we will be talking about Tebow as long as he is in a Jacksonville Jaguars uniform.
Well, I think you said it best when you said, we'll see. The conversation is immediately, oh my goodness, is he going to make the team? How is this possible for a guy who's never played the position, has been out of football? I think we're a long way away from that. That is not the conversation right now. I think the conversation is, look, Urban Meyer giving Tim Tebow an opportunity. Tim Tebow is at practice with the Jacksonville Jaguars. And again, you can get his jersey right now, number 85, the Tebow 85 Jaguars jersey. But 342-7184, what do you think? Jump in here, 912-342-7184. 912-342-7184. I mean, Ben, we've seen reaction all the way from, oh, he's going to make the team, he's going to be productive, to, this is just something that's, news for a couple of days, to this is funny, there's no chance. You played the position at the highest level. Obviously, it's a very difficult position. Tim Tebow did not play that position coming up. One of the all-time great college football quarterbacks. Is this something that is attainable, or is this something that, look, man, for as great of an athlete and player as Tim Tebow is, at 34 years old, 6 or 7 years removed from the league, you're just not going to be able to learn a new position?
I doubt it, BJ. I doubt it, because the thing about being an athlete, or whatever you've done, I mean, you just it's like riding a bike. I mean, it's something that you naturally do. And the thing about when you play the tight end position your whole life, there are certain things, nuances of the position that you just kick into. I know how to run these routes. I know how, when the guy's playing me on the inside, what I got to do to get open. I know if a guy's playing me on the outside. I know about reading coverages. I know about how I'm going to have to block bigger defensive ends compared to defensive ends my side, or linebackers who are more athletic, safeties who's going to try to utilize their athletic. It's all these things that people don't factor in. Tim Tebow is used to seeing the whole field by controlling the game, because he touches the ball every play. So he affects the game every single play. Now he has to affect the game without touching the ball. He has to affect the game without even being in the game, without even being, in that portion of the concept of that play. And that's hard for anybody. And let's face it, Tim Tebow is used to being, the focal point. Like, everybody's focusing on him. Well, now he's only getting focused because of who he is, not what he does. And I'm not saying he can't handle it, because Tim Tebow was a minor league baseball player, but he was still kind of the alpha dog in that league as well, because he was so polarizing. I just think that the tight end position is evolving. It is not what we have grown it to be. We can't look at Kyle Pitts and Darren Waller and George Kittle and Travis Kelce as this is what the tight end position is becoming, and think Tim Tebow can't live up to that. That's what it is now, ain't? But I will say this, BJ, time and place matters. Jacksonville Jaguars, as a collection of tight ends, they're some of the worst in the league, not as players, but as production. So that's another reason why. If Tim Tebow was going to the Falcons, it wouldn't work. If Tim Tebow was going to Kansas City or Philadelphia or San Francisco, it wouldn't work. He's going to Jacksonville, to where they've been lacking in production. I'm not saying that to say that gives him a chance to make it. I'm saying that gives him a chance to try out. And the tight end position is hard to do for tight ends, let alone guys that's never played. So I'm just saying, I'm anxious to see what he does, but I think it's going to end up being much to do about nothing, because it's like BJ. It's like a coach comes up to Urban Meyer, taps him on the back and says, "All right, coach, man, it's time." Because if it's up to Urban, he going to make it. But sometimes Urban got to learn from the guys that's been around him. It's Urban, do you want to be a head coach, or do you want to remain a head coach? Because you will be judged by this as well, the decisions that you made. You already got strike one, Chris Doyle. We'll see if this – and mind you, if Tebow don't make it, we shake his hand, move on. But Tim Tebow does not make it back into the National Football League if Urban Meyer is not the head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Let's not kid ourselves.
Yeah, and again, we're a long way away from him making the team. 342-7184. If you want to jump in here, 342-7184. Tebow at practice is a signed member of the Jacksonville Jaguars. And kind of the reaction, as you mentioned, very polarizing. And I think it's interesting because you have some people who love the Tebow news, right? Oh, man, I can't get enough. I want to, read about it. I want to see all the videos. You have others who are like, dude, this is not a story that's going to be a lasting story, right? Like he's not going to make the team. So you have everything from I love it, he's going to be productive, to I don't care. He's the 90th man on a roster that's going to be what, half that not before the season gets here. So lot of response, and understandably when you think about the fact that he's never done this before. He's in his mid 30s. He's one of the greatest college football players of all time. I mean, do you think kind of the fan response and the player response, do you think most fans are rooting for him? And how do you feel like this unique opportunity will be received in the locker room?
His fans are. Jacksonville Jaguars fans are. University of Florida fans are. If you're a Georgia fan, you hate it. If you're a fan of the underdog story, you hate it and love it. But people want to know why won't Colin Kaepernick get an opportunity? Because it is. It's not because Colin Kaepernick can't play. It's what comes with it, and we can't act as if it don't come with it. Why Ray Rice never got another shot? Because what comes with it. You see what I'm saying? And Tim Tebow shows that. It's almost like sometimes, hey man, somebody got to show like why certain guys won't. And Tim Tebow just happens to be that guy. But I will say this. If Tim Tebow, and this is a slim if he's good enough, he's going to play. Whether Urban Meyer like him or not. Because now it's out of Urban's hands, right? Urban gave him it's almost like, BJ, if you're the CEO of the company and you pull my resume, once I get the job, my production will decide if I stay. It doesn't matter if you like me or not. So I think now Tim Tebow, and but Tim Tebow gets to see what it's like to be a football player that's scratching and clawing for every inch. He's never done that. So I think that now it's not going to be it's okay, Tebow, because he's the starting quarterback and nobody can beat him out. Well, now you're the sixth tight end that's going to have to come to practice before, stay after, not because you love football, because I'm trying to figure out what in the world I'm doing. I got to get my steps right. Forget getting your steps right. When you talk about blocking, now you're talking about getting out there in the passing game, because there will be routes that he's not good enough to run because he ain't quick enough to do it, because he's never done it, and that's fine too. He's going to have to find a niche real fast. And for people saying, well, maybe they could use him how he did it when he was at Florida. This ain't Florida. That ain't Georgia. That is not, LSU. You got Houston. You got Indy. You got Tennessee. You got grown men that spent their whole life chasing an NFL dream. If I'm a defensive end, if I'm a defensive player, I will not be shown up by a guy that didn't make it at the position he came in at, and he's back on the team. Because all that stuff factors in, BJ. Like, it's cool that your homeboy is the head coach, but I'm going to try to knock you the hell out when you get in front of me, not because of who you are, but because I don't want you on my resume saying you can't block Tim Tebow, because I'm guaranteed that's what them defensive coaches telling the players. You will not. If Tim Tebow's showing you up, you ain't going to make the squad. So it should be a fun training camp, BJ, because you got a lot of young guys that trying to make the team. Tim Tebow, he done got hit before, but it's going to be a little different when he got guys talking trash. And they want autographs and selfies before practice. They're going to try to take it to him during, but I think that's just football one-on-one.
Well, and signed with the Jaguars at practice today. And as we've talked about, you can get his jersey. We'll see how it all plays out. But Tim Tebow, there's your news to start off the show. We'll come back. We'll talk Braves baseball. Obviously a big win last night. Gaurav Vidak, Talking Chop, will join us when we come back. 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Back here with you, 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Ben, we said entering the series with the Mets for the Braves, they needed to have some success. They really didn't for much of the series. Obviously lost the first 2 games, but got a big dub last night. It was iffy. You didn't know. And then Ronald Acuna came up in the bottom of the 9th, walk-off home run, great energy, great excitement. That's what you expect from a guy like Ronald Acuna. But kind of assess where we are. You're 20-23 overall. You've disappointed, but you got the big win. Now you have Pittsburgh for 4, who you feel like you're better than. I think you feel like you're a lot better than. How would you assess the confidence level of this Braves team, and how big of a win was that last night?
I would say, BJ, I mean, at first, when you talk, had they not got the win, it probably would have been much different when you talk about the confidence of this team. But they got the win, and isn't that something we talked about yesterday? Just get a win. Like, I think too often the times we get caught up in how did they win the game? No, did they win? You want to get a win in the worst way, and I know we said it had to come from somebody not named Ronald Acuna, but you'll take it in that dramatic fashion because maybe it can steamroll into maybe a win streak. That's something that you haven't heard this year, I don't think, BJ, with the Braves, a win streak. I know they've won some series, but get you 4 or 5 wins in a row. Start, gaining some confidence because maybe and I try not to separate Ronald Acuna Jr. from the Braves, but you just expect that from him, right? It's like I don't know. The announcer was like, Ronald Acuna, this would be a great time for Ronald Acuna Jr. to have his first ever walk-off. And boop, and there it is.
Yeah, it was kind of magical because listen, it's been a tough stretch for the Braves. The opening 2 games of the Mets series did not go as expected. Obviously, you're a couple of games under 500, a couple of games out, and you've had all kind of issues. They've been all over the place, right? Runners in scoring position, you're not great. Late in games, you're not great. Bullpen struggling. Some defensive errors, kind of some mental things that have cost you games. Obviously, the late inning success that we mentioned the last couple of years, you have not found yet. But in that moment, right, you kind of had a sense, Acuna's about to do something special, and he did. And you saw the emotion, you saw the energy, you saw the excitement. Long season, 162 games. But is that something where when you need it, you get it, it can kind of give you a special energy moving forward?
Well, absolutely. I mean, BJ, when we start talking about superstars, there's something that they have that it factor that most players don't have. And I think when you look at the fact that a guy like Ronald Acuna Jr., he wants it all. Like, number one, let's say it. He is a team player. Like, you look at how much he loves when his teammates go out there and hit home runs or make plays. He loves, they love playing with him. But yesterday, it all kind of came together for him. Bottom of the 9th, here it is. Hey, man, come on, Ronnie. Boom, and it's gone. And you love the emotion, right? I know Kevin loves Ronald Acuna. I don't know if he loves the emotion, but I got to say this. Why try to make something that's natural unnatural for people? It's like it's natural for us to show emotion when we do things, when we have success. The thing about being an athlete is to be able to call on your skill when you need it. Hey, man, it's like I'm pretty sure Ronald like, come on, man, you give me anything across this plate and it's gone. But BJ, it's what he means to the Braves. It's the fact that if it was, you would have loved it to be, Ozzie, Marcell, Freddie Freed, Dansby. But it was Ronald Acuna Jr. and hopefully, that'll be. I keep on talking about that momentum swing because this Braves team, they don't lack talent, they lack consistency. And I know that now, some people will say a little bit different when you talk about the bullpen, but I think BJ, the fact that they got the win. You get a Pirates team that's going to definitely give the Braves all they got. But I think that when you look at the fact that they got the win in dramatic fashion, yes, baseball traditionalists didn't like the fact that he's saying it's over and all this. Look, man, it's a hard game. Baseball is rough. It's not easy to get wins. I don't care if, Syndergaard and Strasburg it doesn't matter who wasn't there. That's still the Mets. So I saw something you were saying, BJ, in the group chat. You was like, what are they doing? Like, why are they making?
Yeah, it was a weird kind of 8th inning when you finally had some offensive momentum for it to unfold the way it did. But look, you needed that, and that's what superstars do. You come through in the clutch, you come through when the game's on the line, and you're in a spot now where I think you have to win games. And we've been saying time and time again, right? Oh, it's early. Well, we're kind of getting away from that, and we talked with Kevin about that. You're past the quarter mark. Okay, you're to the extent now where you've played everybody in division. You kind of get a feel for where you are and who you're competing against. The Pirates are one of the worst teams in baseball. You need to win this series. You need to take 3 out of 4. 4 out of 4 would be great, but you got to take 3 out of 4. I think if you do that, you have a different feel heading into next week. And I just wonder, Ben, are we going to look back and look back on last night's game, Acuna's swing, and say that was a key moment?
You hope so, and I think when you're talking about momentum, that's definitely something this Brave team can take it to this Pirate series and hopefully, stick to their winning ways.
With us now on the program from Talking Chop, does a great job covering the Braves. Gaurav Vidak joins us on the program. Gaurav, good afternoon. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks so much for having me on.
Thank you so much for coming on. So, look, the Braves obviously not where they hoped to be at the beginning of the season. Still 3 games under 500. For the most part, the Mets series did not go well. But to have that finish, Acuna's home run, the walk-off, can that give this team sort of a new energy moving forward in your mind?
That's definitely what you're hoping for, especially with someone as passionate as Acuna. You saw that incredible stat. This is his first walk-off home run of his career to go along with those 21 homers to start off a game. Hopefully now he's solidified himself pretty much in baseball lore. You're hoping, right? Everyone seems super excited. You saw Freeman kind of go crazy in the on-deck circle. You're really, really hopeful that the Braves can ride this momentum, realizing that they are better than a lot of teams. You look at the roster up and down, and you see talent. You see enormous amounts of talent. You see talent that can really compete for a World Series title. And so you're just hoping that something like this is that moment that clicks, that everything starts to really come together. And the Braves are able to build all this, 1 win becomes 3 wins, becomes a series. You start picking up these series wins. By hopefully the All-Star break, you're back in first, and you can build on that.
And you talking about the fact that this is a team that doesn't lack talent. As you mentioned, when you look at this roster, front to back, these guys got some of the best players, if not the best player in baseball. Not named Mike Trout. But when you look at this bullpen, you can't escape it. You're going to have to go to the bullpen at a certain point. Yes, the starter's going to hopefully get you to the 5th or 6th inning. How do you overcome a bullpen that doesn't seem that definitely don't lack talent but seem to be lacking consistency at this point?
That's a great question. And you look at the roster and you look at how they constructed it, and these guys should be better than their pitching. That being said, there are plenty of opportunities. There are plenty of players in the minor leagues. Over in Gwinnett, they have a guy named Dylan Lee, who's not the flashiest kind of player, but he's yet to give up a single run on this entire season. I believe he hasn't even let up a single walk. You might see him in Atlanta pretty soon. They have a lot of intriguing arms, especially ones like Daysbel Hernandez, who has got a heavy sinker. You could see him potentially making his debut. Jaciel De La Cruz as well, especially if they shift him towards the bullpen more instead of a starter. He's another super powerful arm in that pipeline that could easily make that step up this year. And then one guy that really in particular that stands out, and he made his debut just last week, is Spencer Strider. He was the 4th round pick. I think it's 4th round pick back a couple of years ago out of Clemson. And so far through 2 starts, he's only pitched 6 innings, but he struck out 17 of the 20 people he's faced. And he's shown incredible fastball command and a devastating slider. And he's someone that, if the Braves decide they want to be super aggressive, he could totally make an impact in that bullpen this year. So while I think the roster construction itself should be better, I do believe these players should be performing better. The Braves do have options in the minor leagues should they go that route. And plus you have Shane Green potentially coming back within, a couple of weeks. I think the newest report said he's going to be taking some time over in Gwinnett to ramp up his arm. So again, these players should be better, but at the same time, there's plenty of opportunities for fresh arms to get a good look in the majors.
We're chatting with Gaurav Vidak of Talking Chop, and you mentioned fresh arms. The starting rotation, we don't know what's going on with Mike Soroka. Huascar Ynoa now going to be out for an extended period of time. You haven't gotten great consistency from Drew Smiley, who goes tonight, or even Charlie Morton. Do you think there might be opportunities for minor leaguers currently at Gwinnett to contribute in a starting role moving forward?
Yeah, again, I think one person you can highlight if you want something different would be Jaciel De La Cruz. He's a bit erratic at times, but his arsenal is fantastic. He's got an extremely lively fastball. Again, you also have, you know, the Bryce Wilsons, the Kyle Wrights, the ones that are extremely talented but haven't taken that next step. On top of that, you know, it really depends on how crazy the Braves want to go. You have lots of high-level arms. You can have a Victor Vodnik as well. You know, Kyle Muller hasn't really showcased his talent so far this year, so I don't necessarily know if he can make that jump up to the majors this year. But, you know, I think Tucker Davidson did a fantastic job in his spot start last week. You know, I would assume he would probably be the first one back up to take on one of those opportunities, and he's done well. He's much improved command this year. I think his walk rate in the minors was less than 2 so far. So, there's plenty of arms that are on that Gwinnett Atlanta shuttle that could see a lot of significant time, especially like you said, if someone like Drew Smalley can't continuously put it together, if Charlie Morton continues to struggle, although last night was absolute perfection. I want to see absolutely more of that using that cutter. There's definitely opportunities. There's definitely people that are available. It just depends on how aggressive the Braves want to be, because it looks like you are going to miss Soroka for the rest of the year, and that's going to be a big arm to try and replace.
Brian Snitker is a guy that's obviously, in my opinion, definitely has superseded expectation when you look at how he became the manager of the Braves. People have been kind of using him as a scapegoat to say that he's mismanaging the bullpen, not really putting guys in the position to go out there and help the team. Do you think that's just people being salty at him for the fact, because I look at it as he don't throw one pitch. He didn't have one at bat. He got an extension before the season started. How do you judge Snit, not necessarily just this season, but how he's been since he's been the manager?
Yeah, it's funny. Snitker is such a polarizing topic when it comes to the Braves, especially the Braves family and the fans. You know, I questioned some of his decision making. You know, taking Charlie Morton out last night, well, I actually do believe it was the right move, just because the offense has been struggling and you get the opportunity to put on a large number in that inning. As for like how he's using his bullpen, there is some question marks. I think definitely last week when they used Josh Tomlin in a high leverage situation, that's something you want to try and stay away from. I think also a lot of it has to do with his arms available. You know, Chris Martin finally came back, and you want to be able to use him in every single high leverage situation possible, because he's probably the best bullpen arm that we have. So having him back is a massive, massive get. I think it really just, it's tough. You know, it's not easy managing a bullpen over the course of 162 games. It's just really not. And you got to make sure that each player has enough appearances. And what it comes down to right now, I believe, is that, you know, Snitker he can't trust enough of his bullpen. So he's trying to avoid overworking while also leaning heavily on those arms. I think Anthopoulos just needs to make some decisions. I think the only way this team is really going to take off is if we acquire some kind of relief help to kind of make those decisions easier for Snitker. You know, you don't want to have to use someone like a Grant Dayton, a Josh Tomlin, those types of players in high leverage situations. And unfortunately, the offense just isn't getting it done right now. So pretty much every single bullpen appearance is high leverage. So I think it really just comes down to that. I think the Braves are going to have to make some moves, especially closer to the deadline. You know, Shane Green's going to help some, but again, he hasn't pitched since last year. It's going to take time for him to get acclimated back. Chris Martin, again, having him back is going to be huge, but you just need to have more high quality arms, and then they're going to have to figure it out. One player I like a ton, who's been going up and down, is Edgar Santana. Back in 2018, he was a massive staple for the Pirates bullpen. He was considered one of the biggest arms for them. And then in 2019, he tore his elbow. Then in 2020, he got suspended for PEDs. This is his first year back, full strength, and so far he looks good. But back in 2018, every single one of his pitches was rated top 10 in baseball in terms of movement. He's a very, very dynamic arm. I'm hopeful that we're able to get a lot of work from him. And then, you know, closer towards the end or the second half of the season, really, really rely on him, Matzek, Mentor, and Chris Martin to kind of take care of innings 6 through 8 to get us to Will Smith. And again, Will Smith also has to be Will Smith from last night. Not necessarily the one that gave up all those errors or all those runs and hits, but the one that leans on that slider to get people out. So I think the pieces are there. I still think that we're going to have to go out and acquire, maybe one more arm, because you can't really rely on Shane Green to come back the way he did last year. But there is hope. I do want to echo that. I do want to say that there is lots of hope for this bullpen. It's a simple matter of getting those people all in line and getting them clicking all at one time, because then it doesn't really matter what your decision is. You can pretty much plug those guys in anytime you want, and those are dynamic arms.
Finally, I know we've said through some of the Braves struggles, just about everybody said, well, it's early, and it's not as early, obviously, as it used to be. You have 4 games with Pittsburgh coming up, who's not very good, and then after that, the schedule gets really tough when you talk about Boston, New York, Washington, LA, Philly, Boston again with some other matchups. Are we to the point now where this is what it is? We're about to learn kind of who and what the Braves are for this season.
Oh, for sure. And what the Braves have going for them is the NL East is kind of bad right now. So you need to wait. You need to just get through this really, really tough stretch of play. If the Braves can come out of it playing 500 ball, during that sequence, then you really have the opportunity to, especially in the second half of the season, kind of take off. This is going to propel them, or it can absolutely devastate them. I just want to see improved play. I want to see play like we did yesterday. Strong starting pitching. The relief was okay. Those guys are still coming, like we just talked about. But the hitters also have to show up. They have to compete. They have to put up quality at bats. Albies right now is struggling. Swanson, struggling a lot right now. But then Acuna getting started. Freeman had a great day. Austin Riley is really hitting the cover off the ball. Like, it's going to be a tough stretch. The Braves have the talent to overcome it and perform well during this period. But like you said, this is a super pivotal time. You can't come out of this and lose 2-3 against all these people. You need to be able to capture some series. The Pirates, you don't have to sweep, but you'll be very disappointed if you don't, just based on talent on the roster. So yeah, it's going to be pivotal. Will it dictate the entire season? No, I don't think so. But it's something to really, really monitor, and every single game is going to be extremely important.
Great perspective. Gaurav Vidak from Talking Chop, our guest here on 3 and Out. Gaurav, thanks so much for the time.
Thank you for having me.
And it's Braves and Pirates coming up. You'll hear that later tonight. We'll come back with more 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. It really is a big stretch for the Braves coming up, especially Ben, like we talked about, when you look ahead and you see who's waiting after this weekend, the Dodgers, the Red Sox, the Mets in New York, the Nats, the Phils. You need to get these wins against the Pirates. You really do. And you have a 4-game series. And I agree with Gaurav. I think a sweep, 3 out of 4 is what you need. A sweep is hard, but if you can get 3 wins, I think you feel pretty good about that. But this is a big stretch for the Braves. 342-7184 if you want to jump in, 342-7184. Obviously, Tim Tebow at practice with the Jacksonville Jaguars today. You can get his number 85 jersey online for a guy that, may or may not make the team. We'll have to wait and see, but we'll talk about that moving forward. Also, some college football preseason polls to discuss, some power rankings to discuss. And Ben, you have an interesting perspective on this, because with Florida, you've told me you don't like them being ranked high. You like people overlooking your team. Why? I mean, why? Is that just you, or do you think teams sometimes struggle with expectations?
It's me. I mean, if you're a Florida fan and you're a Florida player, you want to kind of see like what the national expectation of you is, the national persona of you is. But for me, BJ, Florida seems to play better when they scratching and clawing from the back. Like, when you say to yourself, okay, I'm ranked number 24, 25. Oh man, you see how they got us, and it's not so much you rank 24, 25, BJ. It's who ranks 24, who ranked 23. And I think what happens is Florida's one of those teams, and no matter where they're ranked, right, they got a chance to be one of the last 4 teams standing, because they in the SEC East. They got to beat those guys from Athens, but then they got to deal with LSU and Auburn and Texas A&M and Alabama. But I just look at it as certain teams, doesn't really matter where they start. They almost should do the top 25 different, right? Put the teams that don't have a shot, in the top 10, and put the teams that do, I don't know, maybe like 11 to 25. Because I think when you look at a Florida team, if I come in number 11, that's based off of what? That we won the SEC East, that we played Alabama the best. Well, we'll look at the last 3 times we saw y'all. You got beat by LSU at home for the true freshman quarterback. You got beat by Alabama in the SEC championship game. And don't give me the B team.
I think it's some of that. I think it's who you have returning, obviously the standard and the expectations you have internally, and then I think how you did at the end of last season, whereas you look at Florida and Georgia, for example. Florida, and I understand you had guys not play in the bowl game like you referenced, but you did not look good. The last impression the Gators had, not a good one. And losing to Alabama by 6, I thought that was a good performance, but still 3 straight losses when you talk about Oklahoma, Alabama, and LSU. Georgia, I know some Dog fans were frustrated that it was close, but that's a really impressive win over Cincinnati. Cincinnati's one of the best teams in the country. They're going to be preseason top 10. They probably should have gotten more consideration for the college football playoff. And then while I think there's great excitement about Emory Jones, I think you saw more of JT Daniels last year. So you think about Georgia, you got bona fide All-Americans coming back. When you talk about Jordan Davis, certainly at nose guard, I think Georgia probably feels like, and by Georgia, I mean the program, the fans, they should be top 5 or 6 at worst. I think Florida fans, talking to Gator Nation, probably feels like as long as we're in the top 15 to 18, that's probably fair. But I think consistently, and we'll get into a national poll and some conference power rankings in a little bit, you've seen Georgia – couple of times you've had expectations like this, sure, but this is a very, very expectation-filled offseason where we're not just talking about could you win the SEC, we're talking about a national championship, and that's a program that with Kirby Smart, you've reached that point where that is now what people want and to a certain extent expect.
Yeah, and isn't it funny, BJ, that the top, 5 or 6 teams in recruiting classes are the top 5 or 6 ranked teams in the country? So you look at you got the talent, check. You got the coaches, check. You got the resources, check. You got the scheme, check. Now you got to get the wins. I know that JT Daniels, it's funny, right? I know that JT Daniels has become that guy, right? It's funny when you didn't know. Jamie Newman decides, he's not going to play. That threw a monkey wrench, in the program. Then, you look at the fact that you end up with Stetson Bennett. Stetson Bennett doesn't work out. JT Daniels comes in and it becomes, what would have been had he started the season. Now it's these expectations of it's make it to Atlanta a bust. It's make it to the college football playoff a bust. It's win the national championship a bust. Well, we live in the state of Georgia. Georgia is obviously the biggest brand in Georgia. Georgia has all the players and the resources in Georgia. So does Clemson. So does Alabama. So does Oklahoma. So does Ohio State. And BJ, I look at Georgia the same way I look at Florida. I judge Florida on teams that meet the talent threshold, and do you win those games? And a lot of times when it comes to Georgia, right, wrong, and different, I don't want to hear what almost happened against Florida or what should have happened against Alabama or what almost happened in the Natty. You got to win them, and that's the difference. It's like we look at a Georgia team and we say to ourselves, well, dude, they don't have a good secondary. Okay, it took this many years for them to have a not a good secondary. It's not like they don't have good players. They just haven't played yet. When you look at this offensive line, you got to make sure you retool that. They got a bunch of running backs. No George Pickens. You still got a bunch of guys to fill those roles. Maybe not that production. I just think that we're going to learn a lot about Georgia opening, first week of the season against Clemson, because
that's as big as it gets. That's as big as it gets.
But think about this, BJ. As much as we say if Georgia loses, they're fine. I don't necessarily agree with that, because the team they lose to will be the team they're going to probably have to beat to win it again, or to win it all, or to advance. So they're not gonna be able to escape that. But that's what happens, BJ. Like I said, I mean, you talk about Georgia, they no built-in excuses. You got everything: coaches, infrastructure, conference, tradition, prestige. You got to go out there and make it happen, because BJ, like I know, if Georgia barely loses to Clemson, but if they get blown out, people gonna say, see, and you know how it is. The fans are our biggest supporters, but they are the biggest critics you have when your team don't meet expectations. We'll see.
100 days away from the start of the college football season. A lot to consider, think about, and talk about as the season approaches. We'll come back with more 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. You have the PGA Championship going on, obviously a major up at Kiowa Island Golf Resort. Very nice place. And among others, tied for first, Ben, you have Brooks Koepka, first round 69, 3 under, and he's been a guy that's been great in majors, of course. That's Christian's guy, too, and your guy, Cody. Y'all like Brooks Koepka. That's Christian's guy and Cody's guy.
We went to a golf tournament back in the day in Atlanta, and we followed around the whole time. And he had a bunch of females following him. And every hole, he was making sure they had water. He's a very caring man. We love Brooks.
Okay, thank you.
Man, listen. At the end of the day, I know what BJ's really doing. He's mentioning Brooks Koepka half because he's he topped the leaderboard.
He's in first.
And the other half because he wears medium shirts and he played at Florida State. It's fine, but shout out to Brooks Koepka. He only gets he's a contender every time he decides to go out there. Shout out to that man.
He played at Florida State.
Oh, okay. BJ knows everybody that played at Florida State. Soccer, lacrosse, it doesn't matter. They played at Florida State. He knows them.
You brought it up, but Brooks Koepka among a couple of guys at a 3 under as the PGA Championships going on Kiowa Island. We'll come back. A lot more to get to. It is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. We're streaming live on the web, ESPNCoastal.com. We'll come back and take 3 next. Also, a lot of college football talk in hour 2. Hour 2 of 3 and Out on a Thursday afternoon. BJ Bennett alongside Ben Troop, Cody Queen as well. We hope you're doing well. A lot of college football talk coming your way soon. And Athlon Sports has released a national top 25. Georgia pretty high up. Florida, interestingly, pretty high up. Michael Bratton, SEC Mike, has some SEC power rankings that I think a lot of people will find interesting. We'll talk about that. But first, Ben, we will send it to Cody as we take 3 here on 3 and Out.
All right, fellas. Are we ready for a good take 3 today?
I mean, I was really prepared for an average take 3, but if you want to, we could do good.
I mean, if it was just you two doing take 3, it'd be average. But your man Cody James Queen's hopping on the mic, gonna bust down some take 3. Okay, guys, take 1. How mad would Tony La Russa be if he saw Acuna hit last night walk off in person? How mad would he be, guys?
Oh man, he'd have been frustrated. Yeah, a lot of energy, a lot of excitement. Look, I love it. I think emotion makes sports what it is, right? That's what's so compelling and captivating and fascinating about it, and kind of why we all can relate, because you see people who are the best in the world at what they do, and we kind of sort of get to feel the emotions that they feel. And that was a special moment. And I love seeing guys. Look, it's not disrespectful to the game or to your opponent. I love seeing guys when you come through in a big moment celebrating and kind of letting us see what you're really feeling. You know, it's interesting to me that you hear people all the time say, "Oh man, I want to think like the athlete, or I want to feel what the athlete feels." Well then let them be themselves. Let them react how they react. And, we've talked about this with baseball compared to other sports. When you score a goal in soccer, there's a big celebration. When you score a touchdown in football, big celebration. When you dunk on somebody or block a shot in basketball, big celebration. And I think in baseball, sometimes it's like, don't do that. And I think that excitement and that energy is awesome. And that was a special moment last night. That was an incredible hit. I mean, first ever walk-off home run for Ronald Acuna. Are you kidding me? In a spot where you had to have it, where I hate to say your season was on the brink, but you were about to get swept by the Mets. You really needed some positive momentum. And then the superstar, kind of the heart and soul of the team, the guy that's been one of the best players in baseball, comes through, first pitch, boom, center field. What? That's what makes sports fun. That's what makes sports exciting. And I love the emotion from everybody, from Ronald Acuna, from Freddie Freeman, from the guys in the dugout, the fans in the stands. To me, it was awesome.
Oh, I love it. I mean, BJ, listen, La Russa, he should be mad. You know why? Because La Russa represents a part of baseball, BJ, that I think needs to go away. And that's, you don't get to decide what baseball is based off when you got into the sport, and you got to be a baseball traditionalist. You don't cheat the game. Emotions are a part of just a human experience, isn't it? Don't we just show emotion in general? The young man has number one, he's a young man. Number two, he still has all that young energy, that young excitement. But it's not. But you know what? I'm gonna stop doing what I just did. It's not young energy. It's not young excitement. It's energy. It's excitement. He just happens to be young, and I'm sorry that he's supposed to, act like you've been there before. So, hitting home runs against major league pitchers is a big thing. But when you do it, BJ, it matters just as much that you do it. So if the Roosters don't like it, so what? It's just like yesterday we were talking about the fact that people didn't like it with T.O. was in Dallas and was celebrating on the star. Well, you don't want to celebrating, keep him out the end zone. You don't want guys showing emotion, quit throwing it right down the middle so it can leave the yard. I love it because number one, Ronald Acuna Jr. is an American. He wasn't influenced by American baseball in the sense of where I'm out here trying to show nobody up. It's just emotion. Is he looking to the left? No, he's looking to the right at his bullpen. At his dugout, and his teammates saying it's over. It was over. And I think, BJ, that's why you and I love baseball. And of course, that's why I can't watch. Because there's not enough moments like last night. It's too many moments of, oh, there go a home run. Oh, he just hit a walk-off. Oh, let me act like I've been here before. Let me show sportsmanship. No. We're trying to get out of a losing slump. We're trying to get some momentum going. I'm supposed to be the best player in the world, not named Mike Trout, which I think he's right there, BJ. So yeah, Tony Russo, you don't need to like it, because the thing is, you don't control emotion. You don't control where the game is going. And I love you, Kevin, but I can't do the Kevin Thomas way of watching baseball. That's probably why it's hard for me to watch it now. Because God forbid I stare somebody down, I backflip, or I show any emotion when I'm running around the bases, because that's what, quote, professionals do. Get out of here. I'm happy for Ronald Acuna. Tony Russo, deal with it.
It's complained by the older generation. They're grumpy because they remember the times of baseball where you just had a straight face and everybody was all grumpy because they couldn't cure a bunch of stuff because penicillin wasn't invented yet, So, I'm just saying they want to be stuck in the grumpy times of back in the day. It's 2021. Flip a bat, jump around, stir it up. Don't cry about it. You know what I mean? The only way you could stop it is by not letting them do it. And if you can't do that, we're going to have to face the consequences of my boy flipping some bats out there. Okay, take two. Where does LeBron's game-winning 3 rank in his all-time plays, fellas?
Well, it was an amazing play, just another amazing play. And Ben, you kind of called it, right? You were talking about, LeBron, kind of what separates him is the postseason, crunch time. This guy is amazing all the time, but when the spotlight is the brightest, he is at his absolute best. And you've seen that with the consecutive trips to the finals and the rings and doing it with multiple teams. For me, I don't know that it's right up there, just because when I think about LeBron James, and this is how good he's been, when I think about LeBron James, I think about the finals. That's what I think about. I don't think about the regular season. I don't think about the first round. I don't think about the play-in tournament or whatever this is called. And it was a great moment. Great game. Superstars all over the floor. But when I think about LeBron James, I think about the finals, taking over offensively, defensively, the shooting, the passing, being able to play an entire game, 7 games in a row, never coming off the floor. That's what I think about. So for me, yeah, great shot, incredible. That's why you love the NBA playoffs and this time of year in basketball. But I don't know that I would say that it's like one of his signature moments, just because LeBron has done so much in the finals.
To me, I think I would go number 1 for this reason, BJ. What else does LeBron have to prove? Like we talk about LeBron like he hasn't more than lived up to LeBron was the number 1 pick in the draft. So he had nowhere to go but down. When you talk about him being the best, 2003, and that draft class was serious. When you talk about Chris Bosh, Dwayne Wade, Carmelo Anthony, and that's the top 5. I just think that the fact that, he's in it, he's got a – it's not that he's doing it, it's where he's doing it at. People talk about he was only good because he was in the East, right? And that's fine. He goes to LA his first year, it doesn't work out. They said Kerry Champion reached out to him and said, how long do you think it's going to take for you to win a championship? He said 2 years. Well, last year, in a crazy season, he won it, right? Which is going to add more meaning to it. He's never, ever going to be one of the greatest Lakers because he's not going to be there long enough. He's always going to be chasing, the legacy set by Kobe Bryant. But I will say this. LeBron didn't need last night, but LeBron knows what happens if he loses. See, that's why he plays the way he does. Is, man, if I don't hit that shot, and the thing about it is this. LeBron is the second most clutch player to ever come through the NBA, not named Kobe Bryant. And I think everybody would, be a distant second from that man. But BJ, you know what it's like when guys are playing. At first, LeBron was playing for rings. Now he's playing for legacy. And everybody knows that LeBron don't even take that shot if he's a younger player. But because he goes, look, that wasn't a 3. That was, I don't know what that was. That's Steph range last night. But it's the circumstance. Regardless of what happens in this playoff, LeBron knows that I can't go from winning the NBA championship 1 year to not making the playoff the next. People are going to crucify him. And I think he learned, if he didn't learn anything else from Kobe, he learned this. I will not cheat the game. LeBron plays like every time you watch me, it's maybe the only time you ever see me play. So I think it's number 1, BJ, because of what it meant. And because LeBron knows, listen, until I walk away from this game, I will be the best player in this game, even if I'm in with the greatest shooter of all time, one of the, Giannis and all these guys with all these big time players in the league, I think he's still the best. Maybe not be what he does production wise, but what he means to the game. Oh yeah, I think it's number one, man. And he did it against Steph. We thought that Steph was gonna hit that shot, and they asked Steph, "Hey man, you saw what LeBron did last night?" He said, "That's what big time players do. They make big time shots." And that's coming from the greatest shooter we ever seen. So shout out to Go James, as old Shannon Sharp would say. I think it's number one because of what it meant for his legacy, not necessarily what it means for what he's done, throughout his NBA career.
I don't think it's number one. He's had plenty of great plays from when he went to Game 7 with the San Antonio Spurs, when he was trying to go back to back, had a big game during that time. There's a lot of great moments. He got scraped in the eye, was saying he was seeing triple, whatever. I don't really know what to make of that. I don't think so, but it was deadly. It was from a great range. Can't deny that is one of his best shots of all time for himself. But take three, guys. What else should Tim Tebow try after he becomes the greatest tight end to ever grace this earth?
Well, I mean, he's probably going to become the head coach of the Jaguars, right? It's like you go to the Jaguars, you become the tight end, and again, we're a long way from that. Although you can buy his jersey on Jaguars.com. 85, I think, Ben, is what he's going with. But you did the baseball. He's obviously been media. He's obviously been an NFL quarterback. So you've been an NFL quarterback, and I guess kind of an NFL tight end right now. So I think it makes sense. Maybe he's a head football coach.
Tim Tebow, man. I think he becomes a GM because when you think about it, right? Tim Tebow has always been afforded the opportunity to be at the front of the line, whether he earned that before or now he knows people that's going to help him push him to the front of the line. And this, BJ, you know how it is. Like, Tim Tebow's like the new student who knows the principal. Like the principal's walking, we getting there at the evil. Like, why he walking to the front? This is the lunchroom right here. You get a chance. I just think that. I wouldn't mind Tim Tebow becoming a GM because John Lynch never had no coaching experience. He became the GM of the San Francisco 49ers, came a play away from winning the Super Bowl. John Lynch ain't more famous than Tim Tebow. John Lynch has been a greater player. John Lynch is going to the Hall of Fame this year. But I just think when you look at what Tim Tebow brings, BJ, he's already on Jaguars.com or the Jaguars, merchandise. You can go get his jersey. He's going to sell more jerseys than guys that are going to play for Jacksonville this year. And I think it's what Tim Tebow means to whatever he's involved with, right? Like when he was I don't know no minor league baseball players. I knew Tim Tebow when he was with the Mets. I ain't never seen a backup quarterback do a press conference that Tim Tebow did when he went to the Jets. So I think, BJ, he's so polarizing. Tim Tebow sits with his publicist or his manager or both, agent, and say, all right, Tebow, what you want to do? I want to own the Jaguars. Well, let's go talk to Mr. Khan. I'm just saying, I can see him, BJ, being the first GM/minority owner of the same team. Who's going to stop him? But Christian trying to joke about it. Better quit joking. Because the only two jerseys that's going to outsell Tim Tebow in 2021 for the Jazz is Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne. I guarantee you, nobody else going to outsell him, and those two guys don't start opening day.
I think he'll become a politician. Governor of Florida, guys, watch out.
Cody Queen. All right, we'll come back with more. A lot to get to. We'll talk some college football, preseason top 25 polls, power rankings, 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Athlon Sports has released their preseason top 25 bin, one of the preseason magazines. And look, no surprise, a lot of the same names. Alabama 1, Clemson 2, Oklahoma 3, Ohio State 4. Georgia comes in at number 5. So, Ben, what I want to ask you is, in your mind, obviously that would mean Georgia's the first team out of the college football playoff. How close are the Dogs to those other 4? And those are the 4 teams I think I've seen pretty regularly, 1 through 4. And what's the biggest difference on paper, I guess, if those 4 teams are slightly ahead of Georgia?
Players versus coaching. Because all 5 got the players, all 5 don't got the coach. I think when you look at Georgia, BJ, is, every time Georgia's been in a big game, right, in recent memory, and I'm just talking about with Kirby Smart, whether that's, finding a way to get over the hump against Auburn when they won the SEC championship, to then win in a Rose Bowl against Baker Mayfield and those guys to come up short in the national championship. Then you talk about finding a way to almost beat Alabama in the SEC championship, but to come up short against Jalen. And listen, and this time, Tua gets pulled for Jalen Hurts, and then Jalen Hurts comes in and beats them. You talk about the Georgia team that big time expectations loses at home in the rain against a South Carolina team that didn't have a quarterback, had to put a receiver at quarterback, and they lose because Jake Fromm threw 3 picks. To then have that same Georgia team lay an egg against a Texas team in the bowl game, to then come back the next year. And, I think when you look at what Georgia has, it's always that game that you didn't foresee. Losing to Alabama is going to happen. Not losing to South Carolina where they don't even have a quarterback. Giving up, spotting Florida 14 points in the Florida-Georgia game, to then get dominated the rest of the game when Kyle Pitts didn't even play in the second half. I think what happens with Georgia's, BJ, is it's the moment. It's those like, they beat Notre Dame at home, but every time Georgia loses, it's always everything but what happened on the field. It's, if this would have happened and that would have happened. I think these other teams find a way to win those big moments. I don't expect Oklahoma to beat Clemson or Alabama. I expect them to win their conference, make it to the college football playoff. Unless Ohio State got a generational talent like Justin Fields, I don't expect them to beat Clemson or Alabama. But I bet you Oklahoma, and Ohio State expect to beat Georgia. If you put them on the same field, they think we can beat these dudes. Not that we're better than them, but I think it comes down to culture, BJ. And the thing about it is this: Georgia is the biggest brand in the state. And every time Georgia loses and we open up the phone lines, they talking about things that go all the way back to when Mark Richt was there. And this never happened and that never happened. I think until it happens, BJ, you know how it goes. Until you do something you set out to do, it's a dream. It's one of those things to where if you never seen me do something, I got the potential to do it. But somebody told me that thing about potential. The potential is a good and a bad thing because it means you haven't done it. And the fact that somebody's still telling you need to do it, it may just come to the fact that it may never happen. I'm not saying that's going to happen to this Georgia team, but think about it, BJ. I mean, the one thing Georgia lacks is culture. Not saying they don't have I'm talking about a winning one, and I don't mean winning consistently. I mean, can you beat the teams that match up with you athletic-wise, player-wise, five-star-wise, and every time it's Oklahoma, they did it, right? But that was a tale of two halves. What happened when it's against Alabama? What happened against a Florida team that, in my opinion, last year wasn't even better than them, team-wise? So I do think that when you talk about why Georgia's always on the outside looking in, BJ, it's the smallest things. It'd be like, oh, they got 5 stars, they got the coaches and all these different things, but why can they beat them? Couldn't run the ball, couldn't make a play on third down, couldn't get off the field, didn't play the right defense, gave up I just think it's so many little things, and I will say this about Kirby Smart. He is a good coach, but as far as like development, I'm yet to see it. Because just because you a 5-star don't mean you better than your competition. That just means that you got, more stars next to your name coming out of high school. That don't mean you're a better player. So I think the culture and the development is something that Georgia is lacking because I don't think these schools in front of them, have that problem.
More on Georgia in a moment. Every poll I've seen, I think maybe one had Oklahoma number 1, but just about every poll I've seen, Ben, has Alabama or Clemson preseason number 1. No shock there. I mean, look at college football, but I think it's hard to differentiate when you look at those two programs. In your mind, who do you think's more deserving to be number 1, Alabama or Clemson?
Alabama, because they're the gold standard. I mean, Clemson is right there on their heels, right? Clemson is a team that understands what it takes to not just dominate their conference, but to be able to play against teams like Alabama. Well, Deshaun Watson, it took him 2 times to beat Alabama. Trevor Lawrence had one of the best, freshman seasons, definitely national championships you've ever seen. But we always talk about Alabama is the team you either got to beat to win it or to beat to have a chance to win it, no matter what. I don't care. You can go all the way back, to when Urban Meyer was at Ohio State and all these different things. I just think that, BJ, Clemson knows we can't miss a beat. Clemson knows that they got to dominate in the ACC, not just win games, make it not even close. But Alabama, BJ, has earned something that the entire nation does, the benefit of the doubt. If you don't even know college football, you know Alabama. People that don't even watch know that's Alabama. And that's what they've earned. And it's hard to do. The Alabama has shown that people really don't like excellence. We talk about we want teams to dominate. No, you don't. Because I get tired of the same team winning it. Well, they don't win it every time. It just feels like they win it every year. They really don't. But I think Alabama has an expectation driven by a coach that is relentless, that do not cut any corners. And I think that's the difference. Alabama is the best team in college football, whether they win it or not. Why? Because when Alabama loses in the regular season, that's breaking news. Like somebody beat
It's
Alabama.
amazing, Ben. You think about those 2 programs and, all the players they've lost. I mean, Alabama, you're talking about what? The new record holder for single season passer rating for college football, their all-time leading rusher, multiple first-round picks at receiver, multiple All-Americans along the offensive line, a top 10 pick defensively. Then you look at Clemson, you're losing one of the greatest running backs in college football history. A championship winning quarterback who's the number 1 overall pick, playmakers all over the place. And both of those teams right there, it's 1-2 in some form or fashion.
Yeah, and the thing is, BJ, the thing about those 2 great teams, they won't be missed. Travis Etienne won't be missed. Trevor Lawrence won't be missed. Mac Jones won't be missed. Devonta Smith, they got another Devonta Smith at freaking Alabama. Najee Harris, and that's the thing. It's Alabama shows that if you believe in what we're doing, you got a chance to win national championships. Clemson knows that if you believe in what we're doing, we got a chance to compete for national championships. And I think that's the thing that's hard for other players to understand. You got to buy in first. I don't care how good you are. I seen a player, I think it was a D lineman for Alabama, Nick Saban was talking, and somebody was mumbling. He's like, man, shut up. He's talking. It's almost like when the players start, becoming the messengers, you got it now, because now the culture is flowing through. I will say this: Clemson is right there, though.
Okay, but can I ask this though, because this is the question I hear Georgia fans ask a lot, and we'll talk Georgia more moving forward. But you see Alabama, you see Clemson. Georgia's feels like they're going to play both this year. You will play Clemson. You feel like you'll play Alabama in the SEC championship game. What is the difference? What does Georgia have to do to get to that Alabama-Clemson mark?
They got to buy in. You got to stop thinking that because where you at, you've arrived. If you've ever seen Alabama practice and how hard it is, how hard Nick Saban makes it on them, he's making them earn it. Nick Saban said one time they was running some sprints, and he said, if you can run the last sprint as hard as you ran the first one, you ain't run the first one. He's never, ever letting them slack. That's why, BJ, when Alabama wins 65-6, he's focusing on what they didn't do well. And we thinking, but dude, you just won. Because he don't see the game the same. Dabo Swinney, Mr. Bring Your Own Guts and all this. And is Nick Saban going to go in the locker room and dance? Nope. Dabo Swinney will, because he has to. Is Kirby Smart going to say, a pressure is a privilege? Yeah. But we've never seen Kirby Smart win the one that we don't think he can win. And Alabama did all they could to help them win. Not help them win, but all they could to lose that game in the Natty. So I think, BJ, it's the buy-in. Man, I'm at Georgia, man, but I understand that what it took to get here is going to take it even more to stay here, because Nick Saban don't coach like he the best coach. He don't coach like he had the best program. He coached like he's trying to find his way in college football. Dabo Swinney, he loves coaching at Clemson, but he knows them boys are Tuscaloosa. They waiting. So I think with Georgia, they got to get past this being the biggest brand in the state, because every college team, in most states, are the biggest brands in their state, but they ain't Alabama, they ain't Clemson. So I think with Georgia, that buy-in gonna have to change, because just like I know, BJ, you're in the top 2 or 3 in recruiting, you top 4 ranked preseason. but you ain't hoisting up that national championship trophy, people going to start saying it's more perception than reality, because the reality of it is Alabama has one that will win it. Clemson has one that will win it. Ohio State and Oklahoma, they can't beat Clemson and Alabama, but I bet you Ohio State and Oklahoma can beat Georgia. And that's the reality until they prove me otherwise.
We'll come back, talk SEC football with Mike Bratton. He'll join us 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Expectations high, as usual, as normal for a lot of teams in the SEC, and preseason polls, power rankings coming out all over the place. And boy, a number of teams, including Georgia, feel like they have championship potential. And with us now to talk about the Dogs in the SEC, you know him as SEC Mike, host of that SEC podcast, and you can find his work Saturday Down South, Michael Bratton. Michael, good afternoon. How are you?
Hey, doing great. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. I believe you have Georgia, not Alabama, number one in your SEC power rankings. Talk about your expectations and view of the Dogs when you look at Georgia in 2021.
Yeah, well, I do get a lot of questions about that, but for me, there's a couple of factors, and namely that, I think there's not going to really be a contender in the SEC East outside of Georgia. I think it's basically Georgia and six little dwarves this year. So I think the Dogs are going to cruise to Atlanta. I'm not so sure that Alabama even makes it out of the West. And a big reason why I've got Georgia so high is not only JT Daniels. I know he's getting a ton of hype this offseason and even seeing some Heisman love. I think JT Daniels is a very good player. I don't have him in Heisman discussion. I think that's maybe a little too far-fetched, but here's the beauty of Georgia's roster. There's so much talent around JT Daniels. They don't need him to be that Heisman running back. They probably have the best running back core in the country. I know Pickens has gone down, and hopefully he'll be back by the end of the season, but I really like the receivers outside of Pickens. So, and we all know Kirby Smart, Dan Lanning, they're going to have that defense fired up, ready to go. So I just think it's going to be Georgia all the way in the SEC. I got them going to the college football playoff.
And Michael, when you think about this Georgia team, obviously they're never ever going to lack talent. It's something. I don't know if Kirby Smart has lost more than one or two games, a season since his first season there, with Georgia. But this secondary for Georgia, they're literally replacing everybody in that secondary. Is their front seven good enough to kind of hide them, to kind of, make sure they keep them in ball games? Because, like, as you mentioned, they got talent all around JT Daniels. That's not really the case when you look at those guys on the back end with the defense.
Yeah, that's obviously the biggest concern. You mentioned it right there. I believe their top five corners from last season are gone. So they may get exposed a little bit in the season opener against Clemson. Of course, Clemson's got a new starting quarterback, some new receivers. So it's not like I think they're just going to light up the Bulldogs. They added Tyke Smith from West Virginia, who was an All-American last season. So that looks to shore up one of those spots. And they've added a couple five-star additions. It's almost comical to say Georgia's got holes, but if there is a hole, it is in that defensive backfield. But, the way college football has been trending, that's another reason I got Georgia above Alabama. Everybody's saying Alabama's defense is going to be special next year, and it may be, but that's just not the way to win games in college football. And even if Georgia's given up 20, 25 points a game, I think their offense is probably going to score 35 to 40. So it's an offensive game. They've got the quarterback. They've got the weapons around them. I think if anybody's going to be able to take advantage of Georgia having new cornerbacks, that may happen. But at the end of the day, I think Georgia's going to be able to outscore all the teams that are capable of taking advantage of that potential weakness.
We're chatting with Michael Bratton here on 3 and Out. SEC Mike has his SEC power rankings out, has Georgia number one. And you mentioned Georgia's offense. I think a lot of people are really excited about the potential. There's been talk over the years and is even for this season in this state about, hey, should the Dogs be a spread team? Should they still try to run the football, and focus on that like they always have? What's your kind of mindset for the best way for Georgia to approach this season offensively, and what type of balance do you think we'll see run pass?
Well, that's that'll be critical because I think Kirby Smart, I do think he's a really good coach. I'm never one to call him out, although I will admit I love making the Mark Richt record comparisons. That's just me trolling there, but I think Kirby's got to unshackle Todd Monken and let him just air it out, because Georgia, like I keep saying, outside of the front seven should be outstanding, but the secondary may be an issue. I just don't think you can play college football conservative, and you just can't lead with your defense. You got to air it out. You got to push the ball down the field as early and often as possible. That's what we've seen from some of these dominant college football teams in recent years, like an LSU in 2019, like an Alabama in 2020. So let JT Daniels and company air it out, throw it down the field. They've got the weapons to do it. It's just I'm not sure that Kirby has always let his offensive coordinators kind of do that. I think he's kind of, wanted to limit the snaps that his defense faces, but I just don't think that's going to be the game plan to winning at the highest of levels, which is obviously the goal there in Athens.
And Michael, what type of pressure is Kirby Smart under this year? I mean, I'm not saying he's on the hot seat by no means. I mean, he's definitely one of the best coaches in college football, but he's judged on a different scale. I mean, before we even kick the ball off, 8, maybe 10 schools got a chance to even compete for the national championship, and he's one of those teams. I mean, but what type of pressure is he under this year? I mean, we seen a 3 years removed for him, beating Oklahoma in the Rose Bowl, coming up a play short in the national championship game. Is it college football playoff a bust this year, even with the resume that Kirby Smart has?
Yeah, I mean, that's just the expectations in Georgia, and it's in large part because they've not won the national championship in so long, and it's also because they have arguably the best roster in all of college football. Now, that's because of Kirby Smart and his program's ability to recruit. So Georgia's in a weird spot because every year, I know last season didn't go the way they wanted, but basically every year they're in the conversation to win the SEC, to win the national championship. And I could tell you pretty quick that as a Tennessee grad, you could think that, winning 9-10 games every year, there's more out there. But, the grass is not always greener. So I see what you're saying. I kind of equate it to last season. I thought Dan Mullen had to win the East with everything that was going on in that division. I thought the Gators would win it. And that, of course, happened. It's almost a flip now where Georgia, Kirby Smart, they've got to win the East. And I think potentially the biggest thing is just beating Nick Saban and Alabama for, whatever reason. They just cannot get over that mountaintop. And I think even as much as winning a national championship, beating Nick Saban and beating Alabama, not being afraid of the Crimson Tide, I think that is just as critical. So if they don't win the national championship, but they beat Alabama, I think it's still a good year for Georgia. And as long as Kirby Smart's recruiting the way he is, Georgia's going to be in the SEC and national championship conversation every year.
Michael Bratton here with us on 3 and Out, host of That SEC podcast, Saturday Down South as well, SEC Mike. And at the start of the segment, you were talking about the SEC West, and wow, just the depth, quality teams there. How do you kind of see things out west? Is there a top contender in your mind to Alabama? And I know you said you wouldn't be stunned if Alabama didn't make it out of there. I mean, what's kind of the hierarchy out there in your mind?
Yeah, for me, it's LSU and Texas A&M. And, I mean, I had them neck and neck, just like most people going into the spring, but I've kind of elevated LSU above the Aggies for right now. And a lot of that just has to do with the fact that they're just bringing so much production back. And I know the Aggies took a big step last season. Now they're obviously replacing a quarterback and 4 or 5 on the offensive line. So those are going to be real issues to overcome. And the fact that they also have to travel to Baton Rouge kind of gives the Tigers a little bit of an edge there, in my opinion. And, the biggest knocks I've seen on LSU this offseason, just given the fact that 2 new coordinators there in Baton Rouge, but with the offensive system, it's not like they're totally reworking it. What are they doing? They're bringing guys that know Joe Brady's system. Same thing on defense. What are they doing? Yes, they hired a coordinator that was on no one's radar, but what's he going to run? He's going to run Dave Aranda's defense. So those are the 2 systems that they were running when they won the national championship. So I don't think it's going to be that big of a learning curve for the players. And they're bringing back about 84% of the production from last season, which ranked 2nd in the SEC. So I think LSU is going to be a real threat to Alabama this year, and maybe even Texas A&M. And then even behind that, I mean, you're talking some wild cards with Ole Miss and Arkansas. I think are going to be very, very good next season. I mean, it's going to be wild out there in the West. I don't think there's going to be any layups for anyone.
And Michael, how much of that has to do with the fact that you look at as an Alabama team that ran the gauntlet last year, all SEC schedule to go undefeated. They never. It's hard to go back to back even with a team like Alabama, and obviously LSU is in line to have a resurgence of what they didn't do last year. You think just because of how rough that SEC West is, even if the top is very, very heavy with a team like Alabama, you think Bryce Young and those guys just have a couple of losses in them this year?
Yeah, and it's so hard to evaluate what happened last season just with all the weird COVID stuff, and that was a big reason why I picked Alabama to win the West and Florida to win the East, because I figured, and this proved to be accurate, that just having continuity was going to be critical. Those teams returned the starting quarterbacks, all their coordinators, and a lot of the offensive line, and it just seemed to play out that way. So it was almost like a continuation of the momentum from the year prior, to where I just don't know. And it's almost the exact opposite at LSU, where they had lost so many players to the NFL, bringing in new coordinators, just didn't have time to implement it. So last year's 5-5 season was disastrous, but just don't know if that's going to translate to this season. So in a roundabout way to answer your question, I think Alabama's just got too much to replace, and I just don't think their offense is going to be up to the standard that we've seen in recent years from the Crimson Tide.
Michael, before we let you go, you have some new coaches in the SEC. What are your thoughts on the new coaches taking over some pretty prominent jobs in this league?
Yeah, well, Josh Heupel, that's my guy now. I'm a Tennessee grad, so I got to support him, I guess. But, I think he's going to be a lot like Lane Kiffin was last year, where Ole Miss, high-flying offense, throwing it all over the field. I think Tennessee is going to be in some shootouts, and their defense is probably going to be a disaster. So that's kind of why I equate it to Ole Miss. But if nothing else, if he makes it fun on Rocky Top, I think fans will get behind that. Clark Lee at Vanderbilt, he's already come out and said it's a 10-year rebuild, and that's his plan to get Vanderbilt relevant in the next 10 years. So I think that kind of says all you need to know about what they're working with there in Nashville. But I do like that hire. He seems like a really sharp guy. And then Brian Harsin, and it's kind of a wild card because obviously I'm SEC Mike. I don't follow Boise football, but he had a heck of a track record up there. I really like the fact that he hired Derek Mason and Mike Bobo to be his coordinators, guys with SEC experience, guys not only coaching but in recruiting and all that. So, and Auburn's been on fire here in the transfer portal. So I think Auburn, it could be a struggle for them this season, but I think they're going in the right direction as long as the SEC game is not too big for Brian Harsin. And from what I understand, that's why he left Boise, because he knew they were never going to compete legitimately for a national championship. So he's coming to where the big boys play. And if he can get that thing rolling, we all know Auburn's capable of making a run to the SEC in the national championship. So I like what I'm hearing, but he's kind of a wild card until we see it this year. All these coaches come in with promise and hope, and there's excitement, but until we actually know they can manage the SEC, they're kind of question marks to me.
Michael Bratton, SEC Mike, that SEC podcast. You can find it on Twitter, and does work for Saturday Down South as well. SEC Mike, good to chat with you. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
We'll come back with more 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Glad to have you with us on a Thursday afternoon. Hope you're doing well. BJ Bennett alongside Ben Troop, Cody Queen as well. For listeners in our Savannah Hilton Head market, in just a little bit, you'll have some state championship baseball between Benedictine and Marist. Best of luck, obviously, to the cadets. You'll have Kevin Thomas and Christian Gokel coming up in just a few minutes, and then later tonight on social media for the Game 2 broadcast. And then in all markets, you will hear the Atlanta Braves taking on the Pirates. I think an opportunity to get some wins this weekend, but been certainly very, very exciting opportunity for Benedictine, and looking forward to hearing Kevin and Christian on the call.
Hey, listen, man, gonna miss Kevin, gonna miss Christian, but yeah, I mean, traveling with them Benedictine, cadets, they get a chance to go out there and get that natty, BJ. I mean, I know that when you talk about what makes high school fun, days like today, a chance to get out there and horse up, be the last team standing. But hopefully, Kevin and old Christian, are doing their best not to kill each other on their way up there.
And in our Savannah market, again, we will send you to Game 1 coming up in just a couple of moments. Game 2 between Benedictine and Marist will be on social media, and we'll have Atlanta Braves baseball for you later tonight in all markets. A big start for Drew Smiley as the Braves take on the Pirates, and I think an opportunity when you look ahead, the schedule that's coming up next week and the weeks after that, to really get some wins and prepare yourself for the stretch run of the first half of the season. BJ Bennett here alongside Ben Troop, Cody Queen. We'll come back with more 3 and Out. We are all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. We are streaming live on the web, ESPNcoastal.com. Remember, the shows are archived all over the place, ESPNcoastal.com. We'll come back with more all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network.